Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to revisit engraving, which is for the longtime followers, you'll know this. This is where we started so many years ago. Like those videos, I know that this one isn't going to make me any friends in the engraving world. However, we never really considered not covering this tool because I think we're just too often blindly resolute in hating on tools without proof or evidence. And budget tools can be actually a great starting point for new jewelers. This isn't really an endorsement of this product right off the bat, just a plea to keep an open mind and see what it is that it can do. So without further ado, this is the Vevor Pneumatic Engraver. So first of all, with this machine and all of its American counterparts, I wasn't aware that it required power for an internal motor. I thought that this type of machine was just a really, really expensive, really fancy air regulator, and that is indeed what it is. It's not like a pneumatic capacitor in a way. All it really does is it controls the airflow to the handpiece at a much greater level of accuracy and smoothing out that air pressure. So how do they do that? We're going to open up this case and see what's inside this unit. Now, I'm not going to disassemble it, and I am definitely not qualified to tell you in detail how all of this works, but I'm really curious, and I feel like maybe you guys are too, to discover why this tool is the way it is. So getting into this unit is not difficult. On the bottom, we just have 4 basic screws that we'll take off disconnecting the main body from the blue steel hood. The hood simply slides off to the front, revealing all of the internals. Now, obviously, this is a lot more going on than what you might imagine. Considering something like the Andu engraver just uses the regulator, which you can see in the top right, that gray knob, and that's all. You kind of have to wonder what else is actually needed to run an engraver. Well, if we follow the lines, you can see one of them goes straight to auxiliary, which is just like air straight into like an air tool, a spinning air tool. Then it splits off and it seems to go to the gauge over in the front, which will read the incoming PSI. And then that splits off again, and that goes to a solenoid, which allows the air to be fed into this motor apparatus. And that, depending on how fast it's spinning, will adjust how much air is getting output to your handpiece. So this is quite complex, actually. I'm not going to get too far into this because I am not an expert. I just wanted to show you guys that this is in fact not just an empty box with a regulator on the back. There is a lot more to it. So I just want to show you guys what actually comes with the unit itself, because they don't give you everything that you need to get started right off the bat. For starters, they don't give you an actual tube to connect to the back that is the air input. You have to get your own tube. I'm not sure why they didn't include that. It's not that expensive. Would have been nice. The other thing you need to get is this connector here, which is a quick disconnect, like a shark bite. This is a male to female quick disconnect for the standard air compressor. So this goes in there. This goes there. That's under pressure now. So you can approach this from any number of directions. You don't have to have this, but you don't get anything that will actually connect the unit to an air compressor, and that is needed. You do get all of these lines, and you do get a foot pedal. This is not a magnificent pedal by any stretch of the imagination. I actually have like 3 of these now. These pedals are about as cheap as they come. They're fine, but I find that the window for when you depress it and activate that switch is actually quite small, because when you're engraving, you do want to allow the air to flow in, but just a little bit at the start. So as you enter the cut, it's nice and smooth and buttery. And when you exit, you want to, as you lift off, you want that same effect. So you get a nice clean sweep. Now, there is an upgraded unit from Vevor. There's another unit like this. It's in a black case, and it does come with a different style foot pedal. And I believe that foot pedal is a little bit better. I have seen it on other machines that has a little bit more of a window to feather that air in. The second big weak spot, I believe, is this knob, or rather the electronics that are inside that are controlling that motor. If I turn this on, You can start to see this is the air pressure holding at 30 psi. As I increase this, you can't hear it very well. Let me take off my microphone. You can hear that ramp up. You can hear that motor ramp up. Now what I notice, let's hold the handpiece here and we'll activate the pedal. Currently I have it on 0. So this is supposed to be 0 beats per minute. This is considerably more beats per minute than 0, I think. As I increase this, let's say we go to half. It does increase. Now, if I go to 1, it goes even faster. Now listen to what happens when I turn it. Let me just put this on the floor. Now listen to what happens with this when I turn it to over 1. It stops working. Essentially, after 1 at 30 psi, which is the recommended amount, it stops being effective. It's the motor is allowing so much air through that it can't keep up. And you actually hear a difference after 1.5, or rather you don't hear a difference. After a certain point, it just becomes irrelevant, the speed of the motor inside. So really what the downside is here is that the motor is spinning too fast and or this dial is not calibrated appropriately to the speed of that motor spinning. You should have range over 0 up to 8. Now, I don't know what 8 is exactly. HOH. I've never seen, or I can't even imagine what the acronym is. But beats per minute, it should correspond with something, and it doesn't. So that is the big major weak spot of this machine. And I believe this is where those pros are saying that this is an actual inhibition to you learning because you can't tune it fine enough. If Vevor was able to fix that, or if this dial was able to be replaced with something else, I don't know. I'm not an electronics guy. I don't really know. If you are, please let me know down in the comments below because I'm super interested to learn. Yeah, I believe that is where the whole issue with this thing comes. If that could be dialed in, we would have a much, much better machine on our hands. Now, once again, when you watch, and keep watching this video, when you watch the results of the engraving, it does get pretty decent. You can tune it in. Now, of course, you're just going to be tuning within that 0 and 1 range. So we do have to bear that in mind. My last little critique has to do with the other handpiece. So this one is the one that has the heavier piston. I believe it was 11.8 grams, and this one had an 8 point something gram. I can't recall. That'll be up down here somewhere. What I don't like the most is that this one comes with quick change collet. I don't know if this is a universal sized one. I don't know if GRS would work with this or not. And this one has this wonky doodang thing. It doesn't come off. It's actually tethered in here with this pin. And you just tighten your graver in right there, and it sandwiches it against, like in between. I found that with this 3/32 square steel, it did not fit very well inside of this little collet thing. And this doesn't come off. So this is just a silly design. I don't understand why they did it. They clearly had a better design. If they had just swapped the piston size and a color change or something, I would have been like, hooray, I wouldn't have anything to say. But this one is silly. This is the lighter hitting one, and its function is fine. I just feel like the design is lacking. That is my big critique. So that's cool. How does it perform though? That's really the thing that we care about the most. Not so much how it works, as long as it does work. I've done some practice plates prior to the recording of this, and I'm kind of surprised, but not shocked, I guess, by the overall experience. So for this test, I'd also like to mention beforehand that the Vevor unit does not come with an actual graver, that being the piece that actually fits into the handpiece. Gravers can take many forms and make the entire cutting process work. For these tests, I'm using a 3/32 square piece of high-speed steel, sharpened on an official 92-degree Lindsay plate, honed as needed on the Andu mini pad using a 3000 grit diamond wheel. So each of these practice plates has different aspects. The first one that I was going to do is this one here. It's got 3 straight lines, and then after that, I've also got a jagged line and then swirled lines. This one is just some golden ratio spirals, which is kind of the backbone of almost all engraving out there. And then I also did one that has some alphabet in different fonts. One's cursive, one's even more cursive, one's just straight up like Helvetica or something. And then one of them was just some funny symbols, and I thought, cool, why? So yeah, I thought this was a good place to start, just in general, see how it handles. The Vevor machine comes with two different nameless and unmarked handpieces. They are both made of aluminum, as far as I can tell, and they do feel pretty well made. Both of them are a very similar color. They don't really have too many different markings, except for the length of the barrel. The shorter one has a smaller piston and less of a stroke. So this is the one that would be designed for doing a lighter hit. Hypothetically, this is what you want to use for doing your fine line work. The other one is considerably longer, I'd say by about a half an inch or so. The piston inside is much larger, and this one has a quick disconnect type collet that sometimes works. It's not the best fit I've ever seen. Kind of has a little bit of a trick to it. But whether or not this could be completely interchangeable with actual like official GRS ones, I have no idea. I have a feeling it would, just based off of the size of it. However, I have a feeling you would have mixed results depending on which handpiece you got. I feel like the machining that's done on this is not the most top quality. Depending on the job and the material that you're going to be working with, you'll have to judge and see which one of these handpieces is best for you. For the purpose of engraving on copper or brass or even mild steel, you might be able to get away with using the lighter handpiece, the one that has the lighter hit. I actually took these apart and I decided to buff the pistons because I was finding that the uptake of the air wasn't as smooth as I wanted. I figured, well, maybe there was some dirt in there, maybe some, factory oil or grease or something from the machining. And I think I was right. After I buffed them, they were much cleaner. And I put just a dab of oil on them. The oil came with it. And it actually made that uptake much, much smoother. If you were going to be working on steel, hardened steel, or even just larger projects where you're going to be using a larger graver geometry, you definitely would want to consider using that heavy hitting handpiece. For stone setting, which is something I did do with this, I definitely really liked the heavy one. It was just able to hammer straight into the metal, and I was able to cut a new bezel onto a ring. Pushing bezels is a dream with this tool, actually. I really, really like it. It was just so much more easy to control compared to the Fordham version, which, just using this dial, I was able to dial in those beats per minute, whereas the Fordham, you're kind of like easing into it with the foot pedal and trying not to go over 5,000 RPM and kind of listening to it. I also feel like with the Fordham, because you're tethered to the actual the drive shaft, you do kind of have a limit of how well you can work. Under the microscope, I was able to use this handpiece incredibly easily. I know you could use just like a Fordham with that, I think it's called the reflex, or that extra spring thing. You could use one of those, but I don't have one. I just found using the Vevor amazing for setting stones. So overall, the Vevor Pneumatic Engraver performed above my expectations. And while I'm not an expert engraver, that's not all I do in my workshop, I hope that the results that you see here in this video speak for themselves in a way, and that I was able to demonstrate the capability well enough to get the point across to you guys, the viewers, as to whether or not this is the right tool for you. Even if you have the most expensive engraving tool on earth, without the right skill and understanding, you can still be really bad at engraving. So practice, practice, practice is really the only way to get better. And I can safely say that if you're not sure if you're into engraving, if you're not sure if this is for you, or if the cost of the very few pro alternative options is daunting, this whole combo here, the box, the two hand pieces, the microscope, and this little micro block vise, all come to about 775 Canadian dollars. Whereas the comparable American made version of just this machine, without anything to actually make it work, costs about 2,700 Canadian. And that's not even the newest, most up to date version with all the features. So, like, it's massively expensive to get into engraving. And as I said, that's just for the control box. Each handpiece is well over $500. Each graver is, well, you're going to have a ton of gravers. You need to have a way to sharpen those gravers. If you're going to get into the microscopes as well, that can be very expensive. Block vices are several $1,000s depending on how high you go. There's no end to engraving. You could spend 5 figures on it and still be wanting the next toy. I would safely recommend that this is a good place to start, with the strict understanding that this is probably not the last tool that you'll ever be buying. The absolute best place for you to start if you are a total beginner in the stone setting and engraving scene would be to go take a beginner course somewhere before committing to buying anything whatsoever. Because then when you take that course, you're going to be taking away the knowledge that you wouldn't have otherwise, and you'd have a much more informed decision on which way you want to go. When Vevor decided to make this product, they were likely really unaware that they weren't just making an affordable tool. They were also jumping into an almost cult-like political arena. If you do go down this route and you do go with the Vevor option, you will get zero sympathy and very little support from the vast majority of the engraving community. Most will tell you that learning on a machine like this is actually debilitating to your learning process. Whether there's a truth in that isn't really for me to decide, as I am a self-taught individual, but I am inclined to disagree with them. I mean, it seems kind of crazy when you take it into a different context. Can you imagine criticizing someone so harshly for using the wrong brand of pencil and being told that you can only draw one thing with that one pencil forever? And if you do anything else, you're entirely wrong. Now, I know that there are artists out there who say you should only use, what was it again, Shannon? Polychromos? Whatever it was. Very high-end pencil crayons for doing dog portraiture and stuff. But there's a reason for that. Within this case, these tools are cutting metal. And whether or not you use this one or spend $10,000, it's still going to cut metal. How well is it going to cut the metal is entirely up to your skill. As I said, you could have the best tools available and still be really crap at this type of work. I don't center engraving as, the main thing of my practice. Instead, I use engraving and stone setting as more of like a tool in my toolbox. So for me, this does make some sense because I'm only going to be pulling this out once, twice, every week or two. There is like a whole subsection of YouTube and forums of DIY engraving renegades, so to speak, who are out there designing and making their own engraving tools. And they're achieving really, really nice work with them. Thus far, I have not really integrated into those communities. So you're going to have to do some digging and find out how to connect with them if that's something that you want. Now, let's get back to the Vevor, though. If this machine breaks, you are at the mercy of Vevor, who do not have a dedicated and skilled team backing their engraving machine like the more professional versions. I can't say much about the quality of the parts in this unit, as we don't have one of those to directly compare against, but from what we can see from the start of this video, none of the airlines or ports seem to be anything that I can't find a replacement for on Amazon myself. The one thing that I will be keeping an eye on is the motor in particular, as this seems to be what keeps this entire unit running. And I don't know a whole lot about motors and voltages and RPMs and things like that. So electronic soldering and such is just not my forte. I suspect if there was any part of this machine that was going to break down first, it would be that motor. But let's bring it back to the point that I want to get across this whole video. At $270, let's set appropriate expectations When it does eventually break down, if you end up using it as often as you thought, then it's a much easier pill to swallow. And you know your next step. You know that if you're focusing on engraving, you can make the next jump up and start looking for a used GRS, for example, or a used Steve Lindsay engraver, whatever route you decide to go. So I hope that this video brought some clarity to the state of the lower cost engraving machines. I know that there aren't too many other videos on YouTube that are going into the level of depth. There seems to be quite a few people asking for help and lots of people in the comments, but no one actually making videos about how to do it or what this thing is about or its capabilities. I know that no matter what I say, even if I did manage to get my hands on a comparable GRS product, someone in the Steve Lindsay or Jura camp would tear me a new one because it wasn't, from their perspective, the best one. There's no winning in this situation. So I will be ignoring those novel length complaint comments that I fully expect to flood in. I don't really care to deal with angry, opinionated people anymore, especially with this regard. Our goal on this channel is, as always, to shed light and help people make up their own minds. If this video did help you make a decision and you do want to pick yourself up one, down in the description, we will have an affiliate code, which will also give you a 5% discount if you're interested. We're finally in a place where we are comfortable offering in-person classes. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the description below. In-person stuff is going to happen within our workshop, and it will be on a weekend by weekend basis. However, there will be extended intensive programs as well for those of you who want to learn like the entire process. If you haven't seen it already, we should have put up a transfer video, an updated video about how to transfer your designs for engraving onto metal. I won't go into too much detail about that. Make sure you just go check out that video down below. So that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you got this far, I will see you guys in the next one.